Catholic University in Ružomberku, Associate Professor Zeljko. And before I pass the board to your Clemens and to the Jim, I would like to have a short speech for you about our conference. And I'm sorry, I need a glass. Well, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, and esteemed colleagues, dear friends. Good afternoon again. It is with a great joy and profound reverence that I welcome you to the conference Catholic Universities Partnership, distinguished personalities from Catholic universities and their stories. As we come together today, we are reminded of the rich tradition of your education, faith, and service that defines our institutions and units us in the common purpose. It is different at the Catholic University. It is not, different at the Catholic University in Ružomberku. It is this beginning conference that will guide our views into the past and at the same time into the future. We have the opportunity to set our next path of the development together in an environment and atmosphere that only Catholic universities can make so specific. Allow me to look briefly at the establishment and the development of Catholic University in Ružomberku. In Slovakia, the conditions for the establishment of the Catholic University in Ružomberku were created only after the Velvet Revolution in 1989, when the Slovak bishops tried to create a pedagogical faculty that would train Catholic teachers. The charter of the Pedagogical Institute of the St. Andrew in Ružomberku was signed on June 29, 1995. Later, on July 1st, 2000, the Catholic University in Ružomberku was established on the basis of the institute with the two faculties, Faculty of Education and Faculty of the Arts and Letters. The Faculty of Theology located in Košice was established in July 1st, 2003. The fourth faculty, Faculty of Health, began activities on 1st July 2005. Catholic University offers the opportunity to study at third faculty, Faculty of Education, Arts and Letters, Theological, and the Faculty of Health in more than 90 accredited study programs. Catholic University carries out pedagogical and scientific activities mainly in the fields of humanities, pedagogy, natural, social, and health sciences, but also in the fields of art, as you could see our artists from the departments, economics, and management. The Catholic University in Ružomberku is a university with clearly defined values that we instill in our students. True, to search for the truth, and to be willing to share it. Unity, to work for the common aim and apply the principle of subsidiarity. Professionalism, with the quality education process, science, and research work towards the progress of individuals. Responsibility, to do good deeds with the best intentions and respect the principle of the solidarity. All our universities steeped in the teaching of the Christ and the wisdom of the Church have long been beacons of knowledge, truth, and virtue. They stand as institutions where faith and reason come together and where the pursuit of academic excellence is inextricably linked with our mission the hearts and minds of our students. This conference provides a unique opportunity for us to reflect upon our shared values and the distinctive role that Catholic University play in the world of higher education. The theme of this year's conference, Distinguished Personalities from Catholic University and Their Stories, underscores our commitment to innovation, intellectual growth, and the ongoing pursuit of justice, compassion, and service to our communities. In a rapidly changing world, our universities have responsibility to remain at the forefront of intellectual and moral leadership. As we gather here, I am reminded of the words of the Pope St. John Paul II, who said, "Catholic universities are called to be places where the Church and hence the world is deeply affected by the Christian message and where the Christian message is determined constantly enriched by a living dialogue with the diverse cultural and religious traditions of the world." In the spirit of dialogue and engagement, let us embrace this conference as an opportunity to learn from one another, to share our insights, and to inspire one another to continue the noble work of Catholic higher education. I would like to express my gratitude to all those who have made this conference possible, to our distinguished speakers and presenters, and to every one of you for your dedication to our shared mission. May this gathering be a source of the inspiration and the deeper understanding of the profound calling we have as Catholic universities. Together, let us move forward confident in the strength of our faith, the power of our intellect, and the unwavering commitment to serving the common good. May the grace of the God guide our discussions and actions during the conference and beyond. Thank you. And may our time together be both enlightening and spiritually enriching. Thank you. Thank you.
It's wonderful and very touching to see all of you and all of us coming together. This morning, I immediately thought of the first meeting of the Catholic Universities Partnership. After we had gotten to know a few of you at different universities, we met at the University of Notre Dame in, I can't remember the year, but when? 2005. And we had the first Mass in a little log cabin, which many of you have seen on campus, which is a replica of the cabin which mythologically was the site of the founding of the University of Notre Dame in 1842. And the important thing about that meeting was we had no plan. There was no plan. There was no opportunity to sign contracts or agreements. We came together because we were curious about each other, and at least two of you were at this meeting. And just to explore what it meant that we were serious Catholic universities and not universities with Catholic names, but serious Catholic universities, but also universities that were truly committed to higher education and serious about that as well. And, I remember, first of all, wondering, well, how's this going to work out? And then I I saw this gentleman over here from Poland, and I thought, wow, this is a very distinguished person. I hope we can impress him. And we seem to do okay. Our homilist was I'm making sure I don't say anything that Father Lees will say over here. I'll at least try, but our homilist was the absolutely unique Father Ted Hesburgh, who really led the modern University of Notre Dame. Father Hesburgh became president in 1952, unless somebody wants to correct me. And he was the person that was committed to making Notre Dame a great modern Catholic university. And so here he was, Father Hesburgh, talking with us about how he fulfilled his dreams and challenging us to think about how we could move a step further and grow together as a community of people who maybe had no plans, but who just had this sense that there could be something magical together that could be maintained. And so, as a result, when I look out at all of you, and I think about the many, many meetings we've made, the many friendships, I think this seems to have worked out. And this will continue forever.
Oops, I'm so short, that's why I stand here. Rector Magnificus Marquetta, friends from Ružomberku, thank you that we are allowed to be your guests. I very much feel like a guest. I'm an Austrian working in an American university, so that's one guest. And as a member of the University of Notre Dame's community here in Ružomberku, I'm a guest as well. When I ask my students what's the most important property of a guest, if they have read Georg Simmel, they will say the guest comes and leaves. And between the coming and the departure, there's this magical time where time kind of stands still, the kairos. And then when we come as guests, we come with a lot of gratitude, because whatever we get, we do not deserve. Gratitude is this virtue of understanding I have been given something that I do not deserve. And when we depart, the host is part of us and our lives as we continue. We like to say about Ukraine, it's a country with a face for us in Notre Dame. We have friends, we know places, we have partnerships, and the same applies to the other CUP member communities. Slovakia is a country with a face. If something happens in Slovakia, the elections for example, there's a face for us connected to that, and we are very, very grateful. And this is my third CUP meeting, and the first one in Lviv, the second one in Tbilisi, and the third one here. And there's something I obviously take home with me. The topic that we have chosen is institution builders, leaders who tried to help build Catholic institutions. And we have chosen this topic because our friends in Ružomberku decided this is something we have in common. We can learn from each other about the importance of persons in institutions. We all know that founding an institution is one thing and keeping an institution running is another thing. It takes a village of gifts and leadership personalities to keep an institution over the course of time. A little anecdote of my life, we are searching for a new dean in the Q School of Global Affairs. The Nanovic Institute is part of the Q School of Global Affairs, and they make a big fuss out of it. Big fuss, search for much money spent. And I made this heretical remark, should it matter so much? You know, should it matter so much who is the dean? If we had a different type of leadership, a more collaborative leadership, then the person of the dean would not be as important as it happens to be. So there's an institutional culture behind it. When we talk about the leader, we talk about the institutional culture that shapes the leader, and of course the institutional culture that has been shaped by the leader. Now, last remark, institutions are the important vessels in which we carry the good news. But the institution is not the same as the good news. So for us, in our walks of life, it's so good to have reference points to learn about other universities' important leadership figures and personalities. Education is sometimes defined as we have reference points, and then you can compare. In Notre Dame, we have Father Hesburgh. In other universities, you have other leadership figures that would help us understand the whole portfolio leadership in contexts. Nonetheless, the person of the leader shaping the university has to be touched by Christ in a Catholic context. And it's not the same as just building an institution for the sake of an institution. And I see the three main challenges for a Catholic institution in being dignity affirmative, common good oriented, and gospel centered. Dignity affirmative, common good oriented, and gospel centered, because the gospel does not say blessed are institutions. The good news is about something else. And leadership in a Catholic context means for me transfiguration. You're touched by Christ, and out of this being touched by Christ, you can fill the institution with life, but you're also a guest of the institution. You will have your years, and then you let go, hand over, and at the end of the day, we don't take the institution with us. And in this spirit, thank you again for having us. Hospitality, as you show, is effortless. And that's the high art of hospitality. It looks effortless. I know many hours, hard work went into that. It looks effortless. We love you for that. With all our respect, Rector Magnificus and Marketa, thank you and have a great conference.
Amazing to hear how you appreciate our work, and I believe that you will fare very well, and we will do and we did our best. This is the end of our open session, and I will pass the word to my colleague, Associate Professor Hurkina, and we will have the first session open. But just 1 second, just a few organization information, and I will not speak more. Well, in the evening after our conference, you will have a short time for relax, but I'm sorry, short time, and we prepare for you dinner in the foyer of our Faculty of Education. It's on the other side of the yard. Of course, no worry, we will guide you everywhere you will need. And during this day, we would like to introduce you our traditional culture, our folk. And during this dinner, we have a small surprise for you. So I hope that you will enjoy our dinner. And I'm passing now the word to my colleague, Associate Professor Hurkina.
Thank you, Mrs. Vice Rector. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my great pleasure and privilege to chair this session. And I think the first guest to talk is Father Jim Lees, who is a senior advisor for Faculty Fellow Affairs and Partnerships at the Nanovic Institute for European Studies at Notre Dame. And Father Jim is going to speak about Father Ted Hesburgh, Notre Dame president from 1952 till 1987 at Notre Dame. The floor is yours, Father.
Thank you, my friend. I have a booming voice, but I think I better use the mic. I'm delighted to be here as I try to get into my computer. I should come here shortly. One second. I need 2 minutes. I just wanted to build a suspense. Friends, it's an honor to be here. I'm very grateful for this opportunity. For the last 6 years, I've been living in London, England for the university, so I oversaw the programs they had there. And upon my return to campus this fall, I was warmly welcomed to the Nanovic Institute. I'm grateful to Clemens and the remarkable team there. We have Grant and Morgan here, but there are many others who make it what it is. And I particularly want to honor, as we all have today, Bob and Liz Nanovic's vision for drawing eyes to Europe, particularly those of our students. So I find the Nanovic particularly appealing because their idea of what we might best do is to give students the opportunity to encounter Europe and both either to visit there or to study or to research there. I want to acknowledge too Jim McAdams. All of us know him. It was his visionary leadership that brings us together. And I'm grateful I was able to be had some earlier conferences, one it was in Nuku, yeah, it was in Nuku in 2017. So I'm grateful. And then finally to Marketa and Michaela and the entire team at Ružomberku. You're very kind, and I echo the gratitude for your kind hospitality. I am here to speak about Ted Hesburgh. Now, Father Hesburgh is a priest of the Congregation of Holy Cross, which is the Catholic religious community of priests and religious of which I'm a member, and he is easily the most transformational leader at Notre Dame in the modern era. He stands in a long line of impressive university leaders in Catholic higher ed in the United States, though we would put him above them all. I think it's a slight bias, but I think it's an objective reality too. He was a remarkable person, and you'll hear more about that. But he followed in the footsteps of some rather impressive Holy Cross religious, most notably the founder of the university itself, Father Edward Frederick Sorin, who founded the University of Notre Dame in 1842 with a grand vision. He said that, I think it shall be a place for good for many years to come, and it really proved to be that on a national scale, and he seemed to have a premonition of that sort. I just want to mention our constitutions. It's the guiding document of the life of the priests and brothers of the Congregation of Holy Cross. And there's just, Constitution 1, Article 5 says, we asked how we might follow, and we found many footprints on the road. A great band of Holy Cross religious had passed this way, who had made and lived their vows, who had walked side by side in their following of the Lord. They beckoned us to fall in step with them. We wanted to be part of a family they had formed in order to share in their life and their work. And Father Hesburgh followed in the long line that began with Sorin in the United States, as have many since. You'll often hear Father Hesburgh referred to as Father Ted. He was very affectionately known as Father Ted, and quite widely known. He took up the call to join the congregation in 1936 and was ordained in 1943. He would then spend the next 50 years in service as a priest, and before his death in 2015, at the age of 97, would prove to be one of the nation's most influential figures in higher ed, and in the Catholic Church, and might I say, in national and in some international affairs. He is said to have been inspired by the monument built over the east door of the Basilica of the Sacred Heart at Notre Dame, in which it's a First World War monument, and above the door is engraved the phrase, God, Country, Notre Dame. And it is in that way that he lived his life. He put God first. He was a patriot, as was Sorin, interestingly. He has an interesting story you might want to pursue. And then Notre Dame, which he held up as very dear. The focus on this talk is Hesburgh as a university leader. The depths of his faithfulness to the Eucharist are evident. There's other ways in which he proved himself to be a remarkable priest and a remarkable man, and we'll say something about that in the end. But it might best be said that his important contribution, most important contribution for our purposes, are two major events that happened during his presidency. I'll give you just a little background in his biography. He tells the story, and this is his dedication to the Eucharist. He said masses on dining cars, on South Pacific railroads, an American Airlines office in the Dallas airport, and on a huge icebreaker vessel in the Antarctica. This gives evidence to just how determined this man was to celebrate the Eucharist every single day of his priesthood, which is somewhat rare. I mean, this was long before God's celebration, and so he would have to say at Mass wherever he was, and he was in many, many diverse places. He did his doctorate in theology at the Catholic University, and he asked to be assigned to be an aircraft carrier chaplain, but was rejected. The vow of obedience reared its ugly head. And he was asked to return to Notre Dame to teach naval officers who were being sent there for wartime training. And he also served as chaplain to the returning veterans in an area of campus called Vetville, which is coincidentally now on the site of the Hesburgh Library at Notre Dame. His commitment to his vocation was evident, but I think what's most important might be said two things. One, his establishment of a lay board of trustees at the University of Notre Dame, which was instrumental in so many ways in Notre Dame's future, for good and for ill, depending on who you talk to, but it certainly created an environment that afforded us a bright future. This came as a shock to many, because when he began, the university was quite modest. It was a small university. The endowment of the university was $9 million, which is much for many. I'm glad of that, but that was not very much for Notre Dame, certainly at this time. But it's to say he had a vision that was far larger than anyone might have grasped, and to his good fortune and God's grace, it plays out. He understood the role that football played. I think you all know that Notre Dame is famous for its American football team. And it has been a blessing to the university in many ways. But it proved up until the time he became president to be largely a diminishment. It looked as though we simply brought people together to watch football, and that academics wasn't as important to us as it was. And it was Hesburgh who truly built Notre Dame into the academic institution that it is. I often joke that there are 3 founders of the University of Notre Dame. The first being Father Soren, the second being Newt Rockney, our great football coach, because he made us a national institution. We were followed by Catholics who never stepped foot on that campus, who loved it for being a Catholic institution. It was iconic in family homes, and every Saturday people who'd never gone there or even known anyone who went there would come back from church, and they'd sit down and they'd watch Notre Dame play football. And then the third is Ted. He is the third great founder, refounder of the university. And nothing can be said about that. Regarding the establishment of the lay board of trustees, I'll speak of that first, then I'll speak about the Land O'Lakes Accord, which is a statement which you'll learn more about. But in the wake of the Second Vatican Council in the mid-60s, which had endorsed a larger role for the Catholic laity, in the Mass, I remember my mother became a Eucharistic minister, and I'm like, Mom, what are you doing up there? I was like 16 years old. But particularly in the whole array of aspects of faith, the Second Vatican Council really blew open the doors for the laity to have an impact in the church. And Hesburgh decided to hand over control of the university from the Congregation of Holy Cross. All religious institutions were in the ownership of the Catholic religious communities that founded them before this time. And he wanted to endorse a larger role for Catholics, and he decided it would be wise to turn over the university to a largely secular board. This was a complicated decision for many reasons. Up until that time, the university and the entirety of its holdings, buildings, property, equipment, was under the ownership of the community, of the Holy Cross community. This separation was one of great risk, both for the university and the community. Interestingly, the university was not thriving at that time. And for Holy Cross, with each of the institutions, there was the potential to be brought down by institutions, the religious community, or to be drawn up because of the success of those institutions. But it wasn't always clear, and some are still fledgling, even our own. And the endowment was modest, as I said. The largest single annual contributor to the university until the early 90s was the Congregation of Holy Cross itself. Most of our salaries were reduced until much later and returned to the university, and the residual incomes that we did not take from the university were turned back to the university as an annual gift to the university, which was larger than any single gift given to the university by the lay faithful. Now, obviously, that changes considerably later, and changes considerably. And then later, we started receiving our salaries, and then they went in to support the life of Holy Cross, our missions throughout the world, our men in retirement, and our men in formation. And so that is sorted out well, and Notre Dame is managing without our help now, financially. The largest, well, I'll just say only when the coffers of the university started to far surpass Holy Cross, did the residual income then go to help others in the Holy Cross. It may be of no surprise that it was quite a controversial decision outside of Notre Dame, and outside of the parties directly involved. Having a major Catholic university governed by a lay board was not popular with the Vatican or in conservative circles in the church. It was their opinion that that ownership, that control should remain with the Catholic communities or orders or congregations. Some members of the Holy Cross community too feared that Hesburgh had surrendered too much control. But Hesburgh argued that by bringing in secular leaders with a wide range of skills and interests and resources, financial and otherwise, the university gained far greater expertise in governing and more financial flexibility. And since then, nearly every major Catholic college and university in the United States has followed Notre Dame's lead and formed a lay board of trustees or directors. There is a caveat to this establishment that is not wide, well, it wasn't entirely widely known and hasn't been followed by all those who made this break from tradition. And it is with regard to the alignment with mission and the maintenance of the Catholicity of the respective institutions. At Notre Dame, there was established within the board another board. The larger board was the Board of Trustees, the smaller board was the Board of Fellows, and it was meant to be made up of 12 members, 6 lay people, and 6 Holy Cross religious, of which one, the president, would be ex officio and chair, and one more, also ex officio, would be the provincial of the United States, of the province of the United States Congregation of Holy Cross. They were charged with the following duties: determine powers to be delegated to the Board of Trustees, elect the trustees of the university in accordance with the bylaws, adopt and amend the bylaws by the university, approve the sale or transfer of substantial parts of the university's physical property, and ensure that the university maintains its essential character as a Catholic institution of higher learning. The group ensures that the Board of Trustees, even though it's grown to a number as high as 40, which it is today, will not deviate from the interests of the congregation on matters of great significance, particularly that of its Catholic character. With members of the congregation making up half of the board, of fellows, and the fellows themselves vetting every new member of the Board of Trustees and the Board of Fellows, it's very unlikely that any vote would come out outside of the favor of the interests of Holy Cross and the Catholicity of Notre Dame, as understood by that group in its contemporary circumstance. But it has ensured greater control than it might have been if it had just been left to a larger Board of Trustees. And to give evidence to the success of the structure, the leadership of the university and the wisdom of the establishment of the lay board in financial terms alone, the endowment, as I said, was at $9 million when Ted Hesburgh started, and it's climbed to $350 million upon his retirement in 1987, 35 years later, and today the endowment is roughly $20 billion. So the success from sort of pragmatic terms, and I would even say from mission terms, has been pretty impressive and pretty important, and I think that has a lot to do with the rather complex nature of the establishment of boards, but the rather impressive nature too. At the recent Board of Trustees meeting in which John Jenkins, the current president of the university, announced that he would step down at the end of this academic year after serving 19 years as president, a couple made the announcement, a bit of a surprise even to the board, of a $100 million gift to the university, the largest single gift in the university's history. And most of the people who give to Notre Dame are Notre Dame graduates who have become very successful. And that's a credit to Ted Hesburgh too in maintaining and creating a university that has that much appeal. The network is strong. The graduates are well received in the marketplace and in the seminary, please God. But in many places our graduates are welcomed and fortunate in their success. It was obviously a different time, but it's widely believed that when the establishment came, but it's widely believed that the engagement of the laity in the ownership, operation, and support of Catholic colleges and universities everywhere in the United States has contributed considerably to their collective and individual thriving. Before I move on to the Land O'Lakes statement, I'm going to just see some things in this that will just show you what kind of impact it had, not only locally in South Bend and on the campus, but nationally. And this is the cover of Time magazine. It's quite famous to become a person on the front of Time magazine. Even Jim McAdams hasn't achieved that level of fame. He deserves it. We can leave it there for a second. We'll come back. The other major event, though some might say not an event but a controversy, of his presidency was has come to be known as the Land O'Lakes Statement. Published in 1967, it was a very short document, I think 7 pages, and it was an influential manifesto of sorts. Published in Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin, which is where it gets its name, about Catholic higher education in the United States. And the paper entitled, though it's referred to as the Land O'Lakes Statement, it was entitled The Nature of the Contemporary Catholic University. And it too was inspired by the Second Vatican Council. And the aggiornamento, or what we might now call the church refresh and updating, which was promoted by the work of the documents of the council. So the Land O'Lakes statement charted a course of intellectual freedom and autonomy for Catholic universities. It brought together major figures in Catholic higher education, many of the presidents of Catholic universities, most of them Jesuit, from throughout the United States, to gather in this property, this rather remote property in upstate Wisconsin. And early on in the statement, and this might have proven somewhat unfortunate, I'll say more about that later, it declared that, quote, to perform its teachings and research functions effectively, the Catholic University must have true autonomy and academic freedom in the face of authority of whatever kind, lay or clerical, external to the academic community itself. The document, and this Father Hesburgh, who was most closely identified with it as chair, inflamed conservative critics by leading the gathering of Catholic educators to a certain degree of doctrinal independence from Rome. Few were more articulate in their criticism of the statement than Father James Tunstead Burchell of the Congregation of Holy Cross, and in his work in 1998, The Dying of the Light, the Disengagement of Catholic Colleges and Universities from their Christian Churches. And more recently, in 2019, Father Wilson Miscampbell, also a Holy Cross religious. Our best critics are our brothers in religion, but both in the community. In his biography of Hesburgh entitled American Priest, The Ambitious Life and Conflicted Legacy of Notre Dame's Father Hesburgh. Both excellent works, a bit dark by my measure, but both very, very worth reading. Although most agree that the Land O'Lakes Statements has had a pervasive influence on Catholic higher education over the last 55 years, many have seen its influence is unconstructive. According to Bishop David O'Connell, the former president of Catholic University of America, the statement introduced confusion, he used the word confusion, into the church. And for Patrick Riley, the president and founder of the Cardinal Society, the statement has led to the de-Catholicization of Catholic universities. Quote, he said, "It is hard to imagine that such a simple document could have such a devastating impact on Catholic higher education." Now to the slightly brighter side. A flaw in the critics' interpretation of the Land O'Lakes Statement lies in its failure to recognize the statement's broad positive vision for Catholic higher education. In its second paragraph, and I said earlier it was unfortunate that that line came first, because it was so much lighter and brighter after that. But it was important for them to state that they were looking for an autonomy to ensure the academic freedom that would have been required for Catholic institutions to be credible in the U.S. educational and higher educational marketplace. So it says in the second paragraph, it describes a Catholic university as a community of learners or scholars in which Catholicism is perceptibly present and effectively operating. The statement's proposal on how this central objective was to be achieved has gone undiscussed in many conversations about its legacy. And that might be the worst of it. It could have meant much more to the church and to higher education. There can be no doubt that this landmark policy statement Declaring the pursuit of truth, not religious indoctrination, was the ultimate goal of Catholic higher education. And has transformed the Catholic higher education in the U.S. That position has had implications for what has been and can be taught in our universities, and who could say who could be hired as faculty, and issues that remain contentious to this day. The mandate to the local bishop required of professors of Catholic theology and philosophy at Catholic colleges and universities that came with Excoriate Ecclesia under John Paul II is perceived as an effort to restore some ecclesial control to what had been taught in these realms, and may have been seen to have slipped away a bit in the minds of especially those concerned about Catholic teaching and Vatican. I want to say a word about a couple of people around him. I think it is rare that we would find an exceptional leader anywhere who didn't have important allies and people who made it possible for them to be freed up to do what they ultimately did. And in Father Ted Hesburgh's case, that was a gentleman named Father Edmund Joyce, CSC. Any credible discussion of Hesburgh's legacy would be insufficient without the mention of Father Joyce. Father Ned, as he was widely known. Father Ted and Father Ned. That's a nice ring. He was appointed Vice President for Business Affairs and later Executive Vice President on the very day that Hesburgh was appointed President. They were both 35 years old, under 10 years ordained, and those were the days when a religious would have no idea what their vow of obedience would be. And each year the community would gather in the Basilica of the Sacred Heart, and each religious would be called forward by name and kneel before the provincial superior of the United States province, receive a seal envelope, return to their place in the pews, and then opened it to learn of their next assignment. Needless to say, I suspect Father Hesburgh and Father Joyce were a bit surprised when they opened their envelopes on that day and found out that they would be President and Executive Vice President respectively. And they would have been even more surprised to know, if they could, that it would turn out to be nearly a lifetime-long partnership as they would retire on the same day 35 years later. The assignment process is slightly different these days, I'm happy to report. There's a little bit of conversation and a little more information. I'm not going to, just to make sure you know, I'm not going to be surprised and asked to be the president of the University of Notre Dame. This much I already know. At the time of his death in 2004, when Malloy was president of Notre Dame, Father Edward Monk Malloy, he said of Father Joyce, he was the principal builder of Notre Dame, in both literal and figurative senses. He served Notre Dame and her people splendidly as a priest, administrator, and friend, and while we rejoice that he is now in the company of heaven, we will keenly miss this irreplaceable man. And Hesburgh would later write in his autobiography, Ned Joyce was my right-hand man for 35 years. It would be impossible to recount, even in cursory fashion, all the things that he did for Notre Dame during his years as Executive Vice President. Without him, both the university and I would have been much diminished. He was a man of impeccable moral character, shrewd judgment, rock-like fidelity, and unfailing dependability. It's impossible to imagine the impact that Hesburgh would have beyond Notre Dame, nationally and internationally, and in church and civic affairs, if Father Joyce had not been at Notre Dame to guide the university in day-to-day operations during Father Hesburgh's frequent absences. Now, on the stage of domestic and international affairs, and we'll go to the Martin Luther King photo. In 1964, during increasing civil unrest in the U.S., Hesburgh had been president for about a dozen years, and he got a call on a June morning letting him know that 3 civil rights leaders working in Mississippi had been murdered that morning. And he was told that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was intending to hold a rally a few hours later in Chicago, which is slightly less than 2 hours drive from the university. And Hesburgh was asked to join with him, and his answer was simply, "Where do you need me?" The result was this iconic photo of black and white leaders locked in arms and singing, "We shall overcome." I show this one because the request and the answer and the outcome aptly represent Father Hesburgh's approach to life and his considerable place in history. He was always ready to be present for the fight for justice and human rights. He would not have described himself as an activist, but only a Catholic and priest. And as a Catholic, was called to seek peace and justice in the world. Granted, he had a far greater platform than any of us, but it was the responsibility of us all, he would insist, to stand up for civil and human rights, particularly at those times and locations where it was most needed and might otherwise be denied. Let's go on to the next photo. You'll see in the next photos the kind of people he mixed it up with. Well, it would be important for me to acknowledge that there's too much to fully capture the contributions that Hesburgh made to the church and to society. But in his lifetime, he held more than a dozen White House appointments under 6 different presidents, from Dwight D. Eisenhower to Jimmy Carter. He received the Presidential Medal of Freedom, the nation's highest civilian award from Lyndon Johnson in 1964, and the Congressional Gold Medal from the United States Congress, delivered by President Bill Clinton in 1999. For years, he chaired the United States Commission on Civil Rights, and obviously was the chair of the Select Commission on Immigration and Refugee Policy. Yet he was never awed by the power of the Oval Office. He tangled with Richard Nixon, particularly over busing, civil rights, and other issues. Skirmishes that led to his resignation, some would say firing, as chairman of the Civil Rights Commission. He also fought the White House plan to use federal troops to put down campus demonstrations in the late 60s and persuaded President Nixon to drop the idea. And I think you know that even at that, it was a debacle of the highest order throughout the United States. He frequently satisfied papal requests for counsel and service in the educational and scientific realms, including an appointment as a permanent representative for the Holy See to the International Atomic Energy Agency in Vienna from 1956 to 1970. As with civic leaders, Hesburgh appears to have been just as willing to occasionally push back with church leaders as well. Pope Paul VI and Pope John Paul II called on him for help in a variety of ecumenical matters, yet he resisted the church's attempts to gather greater control over Catholic universities in the United States. It is speculated, though it can never be spoken out loud given church strictures, that he was asked to become a bishop, but he has said to himself, "I think my influence could be greater as the president of Notre Dame." And I think we can agree that it probably was. But he would have been a fine bishop, with all due respect to all bishops. When he retired in 1986, after a record 35 years as president of Notre Dame, a survey of 485 university presidents, secular and Catholic university presidents, named him the most effective college president in the country. As of his death in 2015, he had received more than 150 honorary degrees from other colleges and universities, a detail noted in the Guinness Book of World Records at that time. He was the only Catholic priest ever elected to the Harvard University's Board of Overseers, similar to a Board of Trustees, and served as the governing board's president from 1994 to 1996. To quote Father John Jenkins at the death of Father Hesburgh in 2015, with his leadership, charisma, and vision, he turned a relatively small Catholic college, known for football, into one of the nation's great institutions of higher learning. In his historic service to the nation, the church, and the world, he was a steadfast champion for human rights, the cause of peace, and care for the poor. Thank you very much. Now we have some additional time, and we'll already move through these, and I'll just say a word about them as they pass on. We'd all recognize good Pope John Paul II, Father Hesburgh and Father Jenkins, the current president at the university, is on the far right, with President Barack Obama in the Oval Office. Father Austin Collins is on the far left. He is priest of Holy Cross, who currently serves as the Vice President for Mission Engagement and Church Affairs. This is Father Hesburgh in his early years and Father Hesburgh in his later years. It's to say what a presidency will do to a man. That in 35 years. I think that might be it. Yeah, there's a little trailer here. We might try to. We're going to go off that page. It's just a brief little video. It was a trailer to a fine film that they made about Astra in 2019. It's only about 2 minutes, but it gives the flavor of his impact.
His stories about this legend.
He is chairman of the Rockefeller Foundation.
My God, how many lives did this man live?
He is Father Theodore Martin Hesburgh, president of the University of Notre Dame.
Oh boy, here we go.
That's his brother.
Father Hesburgh had an extraordinary ability to reach across lives.
We all ought to be protesting against many of the things we see in modern life.
I heard from some he was a very progressive liberal, from some he was a very conservative man of the cloth.
Father Hesburgh was a giant of the civil rights movement.
We are verging towards two societies, one black and one white, and that would be America, I don't think.
He was asked to join Martin Luther King in Chicago.
He was aware of threats made against him and other civil rights leaders.
His only response was, "When do you want me there?"
Robert Anson, Time magazine, is presumed captured by the Guild Farm.
He put his AK to my forehead, and I knew I was digging my own grave. I knew exactly one word of Vietnamese: peace. Father Hesburgh called the Pope, and he said, unless you can intervene, he'll be dead.
You're the most influential man in this country, aren't you?
I don't think I'm trying to be. I know a lot of people love this power of friendship.
The U.S. Commission on Civil Rights was going nowhere.
The president called Father Ted.
Father Hesburgh became the conscience of the country.
We are coming from Hesburgh. He owns the bank. Does he own it?
He wasn't afraid of anybody.
We don't prove anything by burning something down. We prove something by building it up.
Being a priest is an isolated life. There's no family, there were no kids to raise. He did have to be a father to all people.
He could bring people together.
That's the kind of leader we need today. We just don't have this kind of figure anymore. I just owe him everything.
Merrick, I'll let you take it, and maybe you can. We're going to open up the questions, and some of you here, I know Jim and others may have certainly met him, but some knew him. So if anyone has any comments they'd like to add, that would certainly be welcome to.
First of all, thank you.
Thank you, Father Jim, for your wonderful lecture. If there are any questions. Jim.
I'll tell 2 quick stories, because dealing with Father Hesburgh was always an adventure. The first one was I used to invite him to talk with my students, a small seminar, and we would take the students up into his wonderful office in the library. And so on one occasion, the students and I had been talking about torture. And so I asked Father Ted to talk about that. And when I took them up, Ted said, "Oh, Jim, come in my office for a couple of minutes." You can imagine him. Come in my office. So I went in. He said, "No, Jim, there are cases where torture is okay, right? There are cases when it's okay." And I was thinking, what is he saying? And I said, "No, Father, there are no cases when torture is okay." And he said, "Right, Father Hedges wrote me back, and he said, well, you know he's blind. So he was bigger than life.
Yes.
Remarkable person.
Any more questions or comments?
As far as you know, Father, did he ever comment publicly, Father Hesburgh, on Nanovic statement, or regret it in a way?
I have not read anything about his having regretted it. Certainly he commented on it and he represented it well ever after. He was convinced of the merits of that decision. Even as some of his very impressive colleagues and peer presidents found it problematic, but he was very determined. And I do think of all the things that he did, it may have proved to be the most impactful in Catholic. I know there are many who bemoan it, but in our higher educational system, we would be seen as catechetical institutes teaching the faith if we didn't have the opportunity to step outside of faculty who aren't Catholic, even though the majority of faculty at Notre Dame will be Catholic by the bylaws of the institution. But it would be hard to imagine our maintaining credibility in the ranks of the finest institutions in the country, which is fair to say what we are now, if we did not have that opportunity to move into other realms of research. It did afford, there was some very pragmatic reasons why it was done. It did afford us then the opportunity to be seen as slightly more autonomous in relationship to the church, such that we could be considered for federal funding. So in various grants, other opportunities even for buildings and funding that might come from the Science Foundation or other federal agencies. And that was very important, both as just a pragmatic matter, but also for us to compete academically. So in many ways, it was both a theological issue and a governance issue, but also a practical issue.
So unless there are any more questions, yeah, the last one because
just a question. Considering that Father Hesburgh's story is unique, but going back to today's situation, your personal opinion, do you see some of the states, the Catholic universities, it's like leading teaching, or maybe not philosophy, that's clear, but
no, I appreciate that.
Or it's something that is so divine that, let's say, there is no figure like that.
Yeah, may I just say I hope there is one out there, but I think Hesburgh arrived at a time and lived in a time and entered into this magnificent recent history where a man like that, with his particular gifts and an appreciation still of religion and church. I mean, sadly the abuse scandal and other things have diminished the authority of priests everywhere, right, and church leadership. And so I do think that it's harder to imagine that society would hold someone up as highly as they did him, given contemporary circumstances. But I hope so, because there are others out there. And there are some very fine Catholic university presidents. The president of Boston College, Bill Leahy, has been in that job for 42 years and has transformed that institution. But he's not a national figure. Those who, this is like inside baseball. You kind of know what's going on, but not everybody knows. So there are some fine examples of great presidents. John Jenkins being one. A steady, hand at the wheel. He's been tremendous for Notre Dame in a very tumultuous time in higher education generally, but in Catholic higher education. So I think it's harder to imagine, but I would like to think there will be.
Thank you, Father Jim, for your wonderful speech and for the excellent discussion. And there is a break in the program, and we'll meet in 20 minutes, 4:30.
I think
another one.
I would like to invite for refreshment.
distinguished speaker is Associate Professor Svitlana Hurkina from Ukrainian Catholic University. She works there in the Department of Church History. Svitlana is going to deliver a lecture entitled Per Aspera Astra, His Beatitude, Josyf, Cardinal Slipyi, a revered figure in the Ukrainian Catholic University and beyond.
Should we wait?
Thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here with you and also to be able to share a little bit of story of his Beatitude, Josip Cardinal Slipyi. Also, we regard him as a patriarch, and I prepared a lot of pictures, so I just can show you a picture and it will be already 20 minutes. But I will try to do my best not to... Okay, let me go back. I started the title of my presentation with the Latin phrase per Aspera ad Astra. And it's really the life of his Beatitude Josip Slipyi. It was like that. So it was really his life journey. And we knew a lot about him thanks to his memoirs he wrote down on the request of the Blessed Pope John XXIII, and he wrote those memoirs in a short period of time, less than the year. He dictated them, he didn't write them himself. Later on, he corrected, and it was in 1963, 1964 when he was liberated from the Stalinist labor camps. He also left his testament, but for that second document, he spent quite a lot of time, 11 years. He wrote his testament, so he wrote, rewrote, and thought a lot about what he wants to leave as his legacy. And I will talk at the end of my topic a little bit on legacy, and it will be connected to my Ukrainian University in Ukraine. His Beatitude, Josip Slipyi, he lived quite a long time. It was 92 backwards, 92 years. It's a long journey, and it started in a village, and he himself wrote, I was born and raised in Ukrainian Christian and deeply believing rural family. He was the fifth out of 4 brothers, and he was the youngest among the brothers, but he also had 4 more sisters, so it was really big family. He was very talented. He liked to learn something new, and his father supported these ideas. And first, he sent his son to primary school outside of village, and then he was able to study in the first Ukrainian language high school, or as we call it, gymnasium, in the city of Chernobyl. In his memoirs, he wrote that it was a nice place to study, even though he was not too happy because everything what they were studying they have to memorize. And he said it was not good way to learn. However, at that environment, there were also some modern ideas spreading among students, such as Darwinism, atheism, socialism, and he said, well, some really fall under the spell of those isms. However, Josip Slipyi and his background, his upbringing didn't allow him to go into heresy, to go to that way. He wanted to study, and he wanted to be academician, researchers. And the way he chose, it and he entered the Lviv Greek Catholic seminary major, and after 1 year of study there, he was sent to continue his study to Innsbruck University. And the person who recognized his talent for learning, it was Metropolitan Andrei Sheptetsky. Tomorrow my colleague will tell more about this great Metropolitan. And here you can see the thesis done by Josyf Slipyi during his studies in Innsbruck, and also afterwards he was sent also in Rome. And in Gregorian and other university, he could learn whatever he wanted, but he wanted to do theology, and not just theology, but dogmatic theology. So that was his choice. Then it was the wartime. It was the time of the First World War, and later on there was time of the local wars, Polish-Ukrainian wars, neighbors. And nevertheless, when everything calmed down, the young priest was called back, young doctor was called back, and he was given the task first as a professor at seminary major, and then he was called to the new administration. He became rector first of the seminary, and then when in 1929 was opened Lviv Theological Academy, which had to be the first step to the Ukrainian Catholic University, future university. So Josyf Slipyi was involved in rethinking the program and providing the best ideas for how to educate future Ukrainian elite. Later on, he was involved in other also academic institutions, and here you can see what they were. So in the interval period, it was, besides Theological Academy and Seminary, it was also Ukrainian Scientific Theological Society. And he as well took over the responsibility of chief editor of the theological journal Theology. He as well wrote a lot during this period of time, even though he had a lot of teaching and also administrative responsibilities, but really academia, research, it was his everything. Moreover, when he went on vacation, he also didn't just went on vacation, he came back and he wrote books. For example, he went to the Holy Land, so there was a book on that. He went to Great Britain, there was another book. During his life, he wrote about 130 different theses, papers, work, articles. Later on, they were collected in several volumes, opera of Metropolitan Josyf Slipyi. So some pictures, as you can see. Okay. This is professors and students, Metropolitan Andrei Sheptetsky really is in center, and on the right hand is Josyf Slipyi. Because he was really the one who shared ideas of Metropolitan Sheptetsky, and both of them were as well involved in the work for restoring the church unity of Christian. Slipyi was appointed as bishop coadjutor, and he was ordained as a bishop in the end of the 1939, and it was the year when Lojan was already occupied by, we call it the first Soviets, by Soviets. During the war, Bishop Slipyi worked a lot as well in different fields, but when Metropolitan Andrei Sheptetsky died on November 1st, 1944, Slipyi became successor, he became new metropolitan. But as you can see, he had only 5 months to do something. And he actually, even during the short period of time, he did a lot. Administration, again, education for seminarians, opening school for counters, visitation of parishes. He couldn't move outside the city of Lviv. He was like limited just to the city, but nevertheless there were 9 parishes in the city, Greek Catholics, so he visited all of them. He visited all monastics, and he also ordained 9 new priests during this time. Okay. Then, second Soviets, of course, were there. It was still wartime, and they started their war against Vatican. And here you see numbers of arrests, and as you can see, 1945, it's a number when the most of arrests were done, and among them were also Metropolitan Josip, Slipyi, and bishops. About his first arrest, Josip Slipyi wrote in his memoirs that he was not guilty of anything. He was just metropolitan, and it was enough for his imprisonment. All of what was happening at the time, it was actually a special operation organized by KGB, controlled by KGB, and provided with financial support, and the aim of it was, first of all, as I mentioned before, nivellation of the influence of Vatican within the Soviet Union, but one of the consequences had to be the liquidation on official level of the Greek Catholic Church, and also its subjugation in the form of the reunion with the Moscow Patriarchate of Russian Orthodox Church. So, as you can see, everything was done for propaganda. So, and here you see there was at the so-called Lviv Council, there were no Catholic bishop, but it was announced that the Greek Catholic Church is liquidated. However, Josip Slipyi, during his whole time, he never recognized the legitimacy of this, as he was saying, shameful gathering. Then there was a long period of almost 18 years of imprisonment. He was arrested for the second time. Lojan became an exile. Here you can see all those movements, so he was not kept on the one place. He had to move from place to place, and very often those movements were very dangerous, very painful, because some criminals would be put beside, and they would just try to subdue the metropolitan. So, but nevertheless, out of all those, metropolitan went with dignity. However, with bitterness in his memoirs, he was writing that this was the loss of the best 18 years of my life. And he was released after the second arrest, and that arrest was on the basis of his research and his work. He wrote manuscripts about the history of the Universal Church in Ukraine. And he had a chance to do some research during his time in Moscow, where he was taken after the death of Josip Stalin. And there was some attempts to use him as the bridge to have some peace with Vatican. Okay, he was liberated, and then he spent almost 20 years in Rome. Here you can see it's in museum there. Okay. So the pretext was participation in the Second Vatican Council. You can see invitation and meeting with blessed Pope. Yeah, and here you can see he was a very good participant. He had a speech by the end of the second session. Okay, he spoke in Latin, of course. And in Rome, he went through this career, you can say, growth. So metropolitan, then he was recognized as Archbishop Major, then was delegated to Cardinalate, and In the 70s, he started to use also title Patriarch, which is still not recognized by Rome. He had his program of 3 sources on which he had to build, and he succeeded in this: academia, prayer, and work of righteousness and Christian life. So academia, it was, he built the University of San Clement. He built San Sofia Cathedral there, next to the university, and also he supported the monastic life. He had many favorite phrases, but as motivation for himself and also for his close collaborators would be using "Do not be afraid, little flock," and also aspire to greatness. And he also always repeated that. He was also inspiration for others. Probably you have seen or not the shoes of the fisherman. So he was like prototype of the future Slavic Pope. So, and he died in Rome in 1984, and Pope John Paul II, he came as a mourner, and he recognized hard working of Metropolitan Slipyi, that he didn't really rest it, but he did a lot, and he tried to compensate those 18 years he had to spend in the Soviet camp. Then his legacy moved from Rome to Lviv through his successor, Miroslav Ivan Cardinal Lubachevsky. He returned to Ukraine when Ukraine was already independent. And in 1991 he was rehabilitated by the Soviet state, and then next year his remains were moved to Lviv. Here we see first graduates of the Lviv Theological Academy, which was renewed, and also why it was possible to renew, because students, disciples of Josip Slipyi, graduates from Ukrainian Catholic University in Rome, they had this idea that we have to renew. Okay. And we have in 2002 inauguration of Ukrainian Catholic University on the basis of the Theological Academy. You can see the new campus, which is still in process of building up. And legacy also is present in the students of our university. And in order to make this legacy lasting, we have now, as you know, to fight. And we have some students, professors who are fighting. We also have some who died. But nevertheless, we believe in human dignity. We begin in the potential of the human spirit, of justice. We believe in faith, in love also to enemies, and we will prevail. And Josip Slipyi is a good example that it's possible. We have to dream high and aspire to high. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Svitlana, for your inspiring and very interesting lecture. And as far as I understand the program, the discussion is postponed until all the lectures are delivered. Yeah, the end of the session. So may I please ask Professor Radoslav to join us? Radoslav Lojan. He is a professor of theology and a dean of theology, faculty of theology of the Catholic University of Ružomberku, which is located in Košice. And he's going to speak on the topic of personality of Ladislav Hanus.
Thank you so much for words. Dear colleagues and guests, let me present to you another very interesting and what I think among all of us, very important priest and philosopher, theologian, and also the philosopher who not really just shaped the ideas of his time, but he has still impact on the Catholic society in Slovakia as well, on Catholic University here in Ružomberku, as well among the Catholics in Slovakia, and people also who are looking and trying to discuss the question of faith. So this is a little presentation, not so much more into the picture. I changed that until I realized lectureship and focus on some ideas which leads Ladislav Hanus in his life from the very beginning until his retirement, and also as he focused and changed so many different Catholics in underground church, but also as well after falling of the communism with the people in Spišská Kapitula in Slovakia as well. So just brief information about Ladislav Hanus. Ladislav Hanus, who was really Ladislav Hanus? Hanus was a Catholic philosopher, theologist, translator, literary piece, interpreter, and sacred art expert, and founder of the philosophy of culture in Slovakia. He was born in 1907 with two of his siblings in Liptovský Mikuláš. He was born in a family where he used to say that his father and his mother impacted him so much, not only by the way of taking him and bringing him into the life, but rather of giving him a very specific personal example of what it means to be mother and a father, who really cares and discuss the issues of faith, of life with their own kids. Then he was well recognized by his local bishops and sent to study in Innsbruck, and was ordained as a priest in 1932 in Ružomberku. After his studies, he taught at the theological college in Spišská Kapitula, which he dearly loved. There are truly remarkable stories about his teaching at Spišská Kapitula. I'm so sorry there is no previous rector who was with us today this very morning, Mr. Josyf, who was one of his lovely ones and known ones, students, who can give us more into the life of Ladislav Hanus, how Ladislav Hanus was so dedicated priest, not just to his mission among the students, but also at the university and teaching as many times at any possible levels, at any possible moments he had. It's truly known about Ladislav Hanus that every time he had a chance to sit with someone and to give the little dialogue, to lead the little dialogue between among the faith and the life of the culture, he always took the chance to sit with the people and give them the lecture. Well, unfortunately, in 1951, that was the very dramatic events, he was sentenced by the communist regime to 15 years in prison for treason. Of course, the government at that time was seeing in him Catholic intellectual who is impacting and changing the shape of the country in Slovakia. So for so many of them, he was truly enemy of state, as we used to say today. Well, after his release, he lived in Bratislava and worked as a boiler operator. Nothing very specific, nothing really significant, but even living that very peaceful, or I would rather say, very silent life, he was still dedicated, especially in the writing of so many of his books, dealing with the question of culture and culturality. I will come to it afterwards. After 1968, he was able to return to his pastoral work and work in various parishes of the Spanish diocese as a parish priest until his retirement. He died in 1994 in Ružomberku, was recognized by the Holy Father and named as a Monsignor just a couple of years before, 3 years before he died. Way of thinking of Ladislav, Hanus, and a little bit about his language, what truly impacts him and how he impacts other students as well. Ladislav Hanus' way of thinking was truly an all-encompassing, based on solid foundations of horizontal knowledge, focusing on God, and also on life experience and insight. For him, the life experience of daily people, of usual casual people, and insight from the life, it's so important how it's affecting you and changing you as a person. Also, he was influenced by the cultural thinker and theological profile of Romano Guardini. He deliberately permeated the consciousness of the new generation with these new cultural forms of thoughts, and that sought unity in diversity. That's what he used to speak all the time, and promoted the construction of the Christian worldview and encouraged the effort of unite theology with life. So it's not more just a theology connected only to God, but it's theology on how God is connected to the ordinary people as well, in a specific person, living in the natural world while trying to grasp truly the entire reality. Those thoughts are coming from his work, from his early work in 1939 titled Rozprava o kulturnosti, which will be the edit in culturality, or talking about culturality, discourse in culturality, that will be it. Hanus used to say that a person may find their true nature in nature, which transcends them by its own vital principle. It is through this principle that God allowed himself to be known in nature in such a way that grants man the ability to communicate with him. Those are the thoughts, once again, from his very influential and still very known books, Discourse on Culturality. For Hanus, culture and man's culturality is not only related to the nature, but also understands its meaning as a product of human activity. It's an admirable instrument by which man acquires ability to respond to God's calling. From his way of thinking, I'm also taking some other ideas from his other works. Hanus supports the concept of integral conception of man in all his depths and universal breadths, viewing him from the metaphysical, moral, religious aspect as a person who becomes better in the world. You can think about him as a philosopher, a teacher of the moral philosophy, or also as a teacher of moral theology. That was the way how he was seeing the person and how he presented the person to his students. Hanus is truly not narrow-minded thinker who, in concentrating on his specialized fields, loses touch with the rest of his surroundings. He's truly, I put that in my presentation, not just a theologian for theology's sake, but about all he is meant for sake. Thanks to his approach, he truly formulated in the 50s a new concept of building up culturality in the Slovak Christian reality. It was a truly new concept, and think about those ideas. They've been written in the time of war, of post-war, and that's also how he was getting more known into the public, known also for his understanding and concepts, especially the culture and culturality as well. As he highlights culturality, so he himself becomes a symbol and personality for so many people. Hanus' anthropological concept of culture and culturality, which we are talking to, was influenced not only by major philosophers like Guardini, Maritain, Molière, Scheller, Nietzsche, Desjardins, and the world literature like Goethe, Pascal, Revered, Dostoevsky, and many others. But also his ideas were shaped by looking into the work of art by Leonardo, Raphael, Michelangelo, Beethoven, and architectures thinkers like Brunelleschi, Alberti, Bramante, Palladio, that all influenced him, and not just him, but through him, so many students used to talk, and used to talk to. And it shaped truly the Catholic intelligence in Slovakia. And we have so many words and so many works written down on Ladislav Hanus' approach, done especially after the 50s. Hanus also highlights the corporeal and earthly reality of man in the world. That is where man's true life and being will lie, and it is the only where he becomes man, Hanus says, in a place where body and spirit and matter and form are truly united. The world for him is not only the space in which man lives, but about all the life and mission of the human activity. It is the place where he gets to fulfill his own essence. Hanus often points in many of his works to the symbiosis also between the faith of the spirit and the life of the body. In his own way, he puts this thesis into practice in a form of essays, which he wrote a couple of them. Hanus' concept also of cultural man is based on a humanly kind person of God. On this principle, he can justify man's relationships with God. He used to say, quote, "Through man we approach God. Through God we approach man. Not power, but love is the cause of all that is human." That final thought you can find in many of his works, many of his speeches, and it's very well known. Also, to look into the Hanus thoughts, and especially focusing on ideas of man and complexity of man, for him, a man must be seen from the aspect of integrality. Hanus emphasized the complex unity of matter and spirituality that is intrinsic to man, so it's written in the man inside. And even though he's used this principle as fundamentally different, he nevertheless always reminds us of their closeness. For him, quote, "Man is an always cultural being, precisely because of this unity of their differences. Body and spirit do not stand in opposition to each other, but represent the two dialectical poles that need it, correct and provoke each other. It is necessary to recognize the complexity of man in order to be able to shape the cultural law." Why I'm bringing all his original thoughts from his writings is because this is something he was not just writing for himself and for his students, but also he was publishing these ideas in these post-war times and spreading them among the people, among the Catholic intelligence, which changed so many of them. Of course, you can understand how this was impacting on the society, has impacted the society, and also how the government in those years has been seeing him. Of course, many of them was, for many of them, Hanus was truly, like I already said, not a very good, friendly, opening man, but rather an enemy of state. Man is for him, once again in the report, culture making being precisely because of this complex unity. Therefore, man can feel the human creation made of certain material substance, with his spiritual content. He always reminds us of the values of the spiritual content which every man has, and this is what he brought to the society itself. As Hanus is very well known, especially for his understanding of culture, so I ask myself even how for him is the culture created? What is the culture in itself, if he is speaking about the culture? According to Hanus, it comes not from the application of theory to practice, but from the lived experience. It is so intrinsically linked to man that he considers to be to his second nature. The fundamental question for man is no longer the mastery of nature, but of himself. Culture brings man to culturality, through which he lives to the fuller extent. So culture is not just shaping the man, but it's helping the man to move becomes even, Hanus used to say, more human. Think about those years in the 60s, 70s. If someone will tell you that your culture, your identity is not shaping only you, but also is helping you to be fully, not just according to God's plans, but also moving you further. He must know the culture because it's a culture that constitutes the entirety of his temporal and spatial existence. Man expresses his being in culture, which in what he makes him only being capable of creating it. Man is driven, Hanus used to say, by culture, by the fundamental impulse of self-expression, which then becomes the all-encompassing image of man. Because of the short of the time, I would like to just a little bit move to his legacy, because I have only 5 more minutes. So, what is the Hanus legacy even today? And why we are using Hanus' thoughts? Still, I'm quoting him so many times in my presentations, at my classes, and we even ask seminarian students of theology and different disciplines to read the Hanus over and over again, even to have discussions and to talk about how man is impacted by society and what the humans can bring to the society when they are shaped also by the culture. So his legacy, 3 different thoughts. First of all, Hanus used to say, man by his ability to be and to enrich by being even the things around him, transform and cultivates the environment in which he lives. At the same time, he allows himself to be refined and shaped by society, never without society, and the people with whom he forms personal relationships. Second thought, man still has unrecognized reserves that give human life the status of infinite transcendence, for there are underlying and yet unexplored forces in man which can be classified in the moral categories of good and evil, fortified not by perceptions but by the spirit, ordinariness, unadulterated holiness, and a truthful attitude to life. And the final thought, which I think is Hanus' legacy to us today, man embraces his soundness fully when devoted to essence of laws, orders, attributes of existence as such, and thus to the philosophical thinking. Among the most important representative of the Slovak cultural elite of the 20th century is the Slovak Catholic philosopher, priest, and theologian Ladislav Hanus. He is still, surprisingly, a constant inspiration for creating the imaginary bridge into so-called the spiritual ideal, which begins in a man himself, but at the same time, it transcends him. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Radoslav, for your presentation. And now, let me welcome Professor Rector Zeljko Tanjić, Director of Catholic University in Croatia. Zeljko is a professor of fundamental theology, and he's going to deliver a lecture on Mr. Marko Franović, significant benefactor and supporter of the Catholic University of Croatia. The lecture is now going to be delivered by Professor Father Ante Crnčević, also from Catholic University of Croatia. Father Ante is a professor of Catholic theology, and he's also a head of the Department of Liturgy. His presentation is on Cardinal Josip Bozanić, Archbishop emeritus of Zagreb, the founder of the Catholic University of Croatia. Dear Father, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Dear friends and members of the Catholic University Partnership, I stand before you introducing one of the youngest Catholic universities in Central and Eastern Europe, the Catholic University of Croatia, and its founder, the retired Archbishop of Zagreb, Cardinal Josip Bozanić. It is reasonable to ask at the beginning why, in a country where the number of Catholics reaches 85%, a Catholic university is established so late in 2006. The reason for this is quite simple, precisely because such a large proportion of Catholics in the population. Historical circumstances have preserved the Croatian regions largely as Catholic, with a strong presence and role of the Catholic Church in shaping society and culture, either through regular pastoral activities or through the establishment of various church schools. In Zagreb, already at the beginning of the 14th century, after the establishment of the Zagreb diocese, the study of philosophy and theology was initiated, and in the 17th century, the church faculty became the core of the Public University of Zagreb. The role of the Catholic Faculty of Theology in that university was unquestionable. This is also evident in the fact that professors from the Faculty of Theology alternated in the role of the university's rector in such a way that every second mandate belonged to a candidate from the Faculty of Theology. In a society with a strong Catholic identity and within a public university where Catholic distinctiveness was deeply ingrained, the establishment of a separate Catholic university was not considered necessary. However, the 20th century, especially during the communist regime after the Second World War, made this need urgent, essential, and brought it to the forefront. Nevertheless, during the communist era, this was impossible and unthinkable. Moreover, the Catholic Faculty of Theology itself was expelled from the public university, and all church schools lost the right of public activities, surviving only as intra-church institutions for the education of future priests. It took until the 90s and the fall of communism for changes to occur. In these changes, with an awareness of the need for spiritual renewal after the era of communism and the devastation of war, the idea matured that the presence of the church within a public university was not sufficient. There was a growing realization of the need to establish a separate Catholic university. This idea was entirely new in Croatia at the time, almost revolutionary, as there were no private universities there then. Only public state universities existed. Therefore, it was necessary first to build awareness of this new idea in society, including among Catholics, also among bishops and priests, and to create the legal prerequisites for a university was not public. It is also important to bear in mind the fact that the Republic of Croatia received international recognition of its independence and sovereignty only in 1992. Based on the agreement of legal matters between the Holy See and the Republic of Croatia in 1996, the agreement of cooperation in the field of education and culture was also signed. This agreement enabled the church authorities to establish new higher education Catholic institutions which can be accredited. The provision addressing this matter was added immediately before the final text was agreed upon, at the suggestion of Josip Bozanić, Bishop of Crnčević, is a small diocese on the Adriatic coast. Bozanić was a member of the commission on behalf of the Croatian Conference of Bishops. At that moment, this provision could not be legally implemented as it referred to something that did not yet exist. It harbored the dream and the vision of the Catholic University of Croatia. This was in 1996. 1 year later, Bishop Bozanić became the Archbishop of Zagreb, and 10 years later, in 2006, he signed the decree on the establishment of the Catholic University of Croatia. During that 10-year period, he sought to bring his idea closer to others, not expecting complete support from everyone, but seeking collaborators, especially young professors who, open to new challenges, would be willing to selflessly engage in this significant project. He worked quietly and persistently, drawing inspiration from the experiences of other Catholic universities from countries in Central Europe. In his distinct manner, he emphasized the principles of Christian anthropology in his speeches, not hesitating to say that in Christian humanism, the true roots and foundations for a healthy future are found because, as he stated, for genuine renewal in Croatia, thinkers and creators, people with new visions, people of the spirit are needed. An important step in the formation of the university was the establishment of the committee for the foundation of the university on the feast of the Epiphany, January 6, 2005. In that feast, he also found the inspiration for the title of the decree on the foundation of the university, Luce Vera Illuminata, illuminated by the true light. The incipit of decree on the foundation of the university, Luce Vera Illuminata, uses the image of light to talk about the mission of the church in the field of education. Christ, Lux Vera, illuminates the church so that it can bring his light into the research of the truth and in the transfer of knowledge in the face of multifaceted social and cultural challenges. In the same text, he indicates that the Christian inspiration of both individuals and the entire university community will enable the university to incorporate an ethical, spiritual, and religious dimension into its work valuing the achievements of science and technology and bearing in mind the integrity of the human person, and to explore the mysteries of man, interpreting them in the light of revelation. In his speeches, but even more so in his plans and accomplishments, the Cardinal emphasized that the radiance of the Christian pearl, by which the vitality of the Church is recognized, comes from selflessness, from love for others. In this radiance, he stated, we recognize people who are not afraid to expose themselves for the truth, who seek the good of others, even when the truth requires change of their own lives. It was not easy to build the university without established or paid paths in a society unfamiliar with private or Catholic universities. Education and culture were strongly influenced and dependent on the state, and any attempt at an alternative path in the field of education was viewed with suspicion. It required a lot of wisdom and patience, often navigating between two temptations, finding paths of dialogue with scientific and educational institutions openly opposed to the establishment of the Catholic University, while also dealing with those institutions and individuals who, in the name of collaboration and openness, harbored a hidden tendency to influence and dominate the young university. Some public universities have banned their professors any cooperation with Catholic University. In such circumstances, Cardinal Bozanić demonstrated prudence and courage, especially when in agreement with the university leadership, he decided to postpone the start of the university's activities in 2009, even so it had already been announced. In doing so, in the early days when the young university was just learning to walk, he clearly showed that it must be entirely independent, faithfully persevering in its vision and mission, distinguishing challenges from temptations, and having the courage to make tough decisions. This temporary closing of the university doors opened the public perception of its independence and freedom, as well as its unwavering commitment to shaping a distinctly recognizable Catholic identity. The message sent to everyone was that the university is managed responsibly, requiring not only the flexibility to seek compromises and possible paths, but often also a firm hand to maintain direction. In 2010, the university commenced regular classes modestly, with only one academic program and 40 enrolled students. On the first day of the classes, the Cardinal felt the need to address an encouraging word to the first generation of students. I know that you are not here to hear praise, because if that were the case, this project would have a future. In the same speech, referring to the university identity sign, an eight-pointed star as the source of the rays of the true light. He highlighted light events from the biblical history of salvation, and based on them, he presented the university and the learning on it. At the beginning of its creation, it teaches us how important it is to find sources to discover which ones are real and which ones are false. It is the art of selection and discernment. From the history of Exodus, we learn that in research one should have the courage of willingness to go out to oppose ideologies. Making a covenant with God highlights the power of faithfulness. In doing so, the Cardinal holds that various offers within the scientific world can obscure the view, be attractive to the extent the truth is denied in the name of personal gain. The event of God's incarnation brings to light the importance of humility, because knowledge without humility is easily directed against men. Christ's passion and death as a seeming defeat refer to that part of learning and research which often faces trials in scientific work and higher education. The Passion of Christ speaks about the value of perseverance. The resurrection shows that it is necessary to look beyond what is obvious and which often hinders true progress. At the same time, one learns a step that transcends the earthly and the importance of observing the world from the perspective of God's view. Pentecost and the descent of the Holy Spirit proclaims openness to inspiration, a desire for openness and communion, the adoption of a language understood by all. The last characteristic of university journey can be read in the second coming of Christ, which is the openness of history that once again merges into God. By setting such broad principles in openness to everyone, in openness to various fields of science and research, the Cardinal is showing the young university what studying truly is, because behind the Latin words to human words, to the other are the words effort, aspiration, inclination, tendency, desire, longing, yearning. The space where the university campus is situated speaks to the role of the university in the transformation of Croatian society. Once military barracks, which served as fortress of communist ideology and anti-church activities, have now become a place of truth that provides space for freedom and where responsibility for society and the dignity of human is learned. The beginning of university activities is in three study programs: history, sociology, and psychology, as justified by the Croatian context. Similarly, in Cardinal's vision, the study programs of sociology and psychology were designed in openness to Christian anthropology, which as a new humanism is not some ideological addition, but one that penetrates into all aspects of evaluation and interpretation of man and society. The Cardinal sought to consistently actualize the university mission and role in society. In public discourse, he spoke about the importance of the university, and at the university, he discussed the role in society. In one occasion, he boldly emphasized that the university task university's task is to hold a mirror in front of society. As great chancellor of the university, Cardinal Bozanić did not miss a single university day, and he found many other occasions, more or less important ones, to be close to the university community, to encourage it with incentives to question its courage and fidelity to the mission of the Church. Cardinal usually did not set deadlines, but goals, and the goals, to put in the language of music, determine which tempo would be wiser, adagio, moderato, presto, permitting ritardando only when it required time for maturation to make the right decisions. But then actor Zeljko Tanjić came, who set deadlines for the Cardinal, always getting shorter, or in the language of music, accelerando or più mosso. In English, get faster and more movement. As Cardinal of the Holy Church, member of the Congregation for Catholic Education, President of Croatian Conference of Bishops, and the first Vice President of the Council of Bishops Conference of Europe, the Cardinal Bozanić opened the door cooperation with other universities and established connections with many other institutions. So, only some picture. Thanks to him and to the diligent efforts of the first rector, Bishop Ivan Šaško, and the current rector, Zeljko Tanjić, our university is strongly included in the network of Catholic universities, especially in the area of Central and Eastern Europe, because we are bound by the same historical burden, and because even today we live and act in contexts that give us the same tasks. The Cardinal was aware that we must learn from the great universities in the West, especially from the University of Notre Dame. The first contacts with Notre Dame were made in 2006, and Jean Adams is the witness of these contacts, the protagonist of these first contacts. Thank you, Jean. But the Cardinal was also aware that in those Western universities, we cannot learn what is possible to find in the small and young universities of Central and Eastern Europe in order to shape our distinctiveness more easily in an environment of similar mentality, similar difficulties, and similar challenges. This conception helps us to be able to learn from each other, and for the network of Catholic universities to preserve this part of Europe Christian, and the Church capable to bring Ružomberku into the life of education and science in its responsibility for society and the world. Cardinal Bozanić had the courage to light the lamp of the Catholic University of Croatia, and with perseverance and selfless counsel, he was vigilant that the oil of wisdom did not run out in that lamp. Thank you for
Thank you, Father Ante. And now is the time for Father Rector Zeljko Tanjić. I think we are about to
I think the droid has decided that Ante is first. That was a good decision.
Zeljko is going to have the last word. Because of the providence.
Because much better, his lecture was before mine. Because the tempo,
So, I can just start. It's nice to see all of you. I'm so grateful to our friends here in Ružomberku for inviting us once again to be here. I have to say my personal testimony. I was here first time 10 years ago by the opening of the new library. I just 2 years in office. Everything was new to me, and I was dreaming such a library like here in Ružomberku. We are close to that. So. And I'm so grateful to see all of you, dear friends. When we were talking to present two personalities from our university, the idea was that Ante presents our founder because he sees the things a little bit from outside. He's connected with our university, but he sees a little bit more objectively than I would present our founder. So he did a great job. So, because maybe I would talk about some other difficulties. It's not always easy to deal with grand chancellors, but that's what everything what Father Ante said. It's really true. Secondly, our university is the youngest one among Catholic universities in our partnership. So we have young group of scholars, even though we have also people with really great background in scientific and teaching life, but it's quite unusual maybe to present them who are alive, to pick somebody among them. For example, my former vice rector, he used to be ambassador to Holy See and really one famous archaeologist, member of Pontifical Academy and so on. So I decided, after we decided to do about our founder, Cardinal Bozanić, to present another personality who is a little bit alike. I don't want to compare, it's nothing to compare, but when I knew that Nanovic is going to be in the center today, I was thinking about this culture of friendship and also fundraising, or also, let's say, philanthropy toward Catholic universities. This is something not common in our European context, because Catholic universities in the European context are all financed by the church scholarships or by even supported by state. But this kind of philanthropy in our context is not so developed like in the States. But I think we should work on it, because this is really, if we see Bob Nanovic's story, this is really amazing story, amazing relations, and helped a lot. And so it's unusual also in Croatia. But we have not such a big supporter like Nobs to Nanovic Institute, but we have such a guy, let's say. We have one of these. So this is Mr. Marko Franović, who lives in Australia. And I met Mr. Franović for the first time, so that there is a picture we have together. I met him for the first time in Australia in 2015. I was there when I visited Australia for the General Assembly of the World Federation of Catholic Universities, which was held at the Australian Catholic University. Some people were talking to me about him, but it's interesting that one Jewish scholar, American historian, Jewish Rhodes, Dr. Esther Gitman, she's still alive, and she wrote a lot about Croatian history, because she was born in Sarajevo, and she survived Holocaust, and she made PhD at New York University, and she felt in love. This is a little bit strange for a Jewish scholar in Stepinac, who is always accused of not being enough friendly during World War II, like Cardinal Slipyi and others, but he helped a lot of Jews, and she was constantly working on his biography, and she met Marko Franović because they have a similar biography. I will explain that. In any case, he escaped
that time Yugoslavia, because he was opposing communist regime. And for a poor man, poor young man, he became very wealthy because he had a private entrepreneurship. And I will tell you something about this story and how he helped our university to develop, and how he shaped also one part of our development. So it's very interesting. He was born in Montenegro, today's Montenegro, in a small Croatian Catholic community. And he loves Montenegro. He supports a lot of projects there because Montenegro is also a very difficult situation today because of many political issues, and then he was there. As a young guy, he's here in a picture with his father. He never wanted to join the Communist Party. And he attempted to leave Yugoslavia at that time, and first time he was caught and he was imprisoned for a while, not too long, less than 1 year. And then secondly, because it was like considered to be like the young enemy and so on, they didn't give him passport. And secondly, and second time, he fled from communism. He was 18 years old. And at that time, with his fiancée, Stana, in the 60s, and then he went to Australia. And he was starting working in a factory, this story, and then and supporting his family. And then he started a house building company. And it is one of the biggest companies, medium size now, in any case, in Australia. But always faithful Catholic, but he had really a difficult life. Because his son died in 2010 at the age of 34. And then his wife passed away because she couldn't cope with that from pain and so on. And so he's still into one of his child, and he has grandchildren and so on. But in any case, he was a great and still great patriot. And he was dreaming once Croatia being independent. That's also very important. And he came to Croatia only after independence. During communist time, it was unable to visit Croatia. And so she created this Boka group. Boka is Boka Kotorska. This is one bay in Montenegro, beautiful bay. You should go visit Boka. This is like Gulf of Venice. Small, really, it's a treasure. Not still, not too famous to many of people, but this is cultural heritage, beauty of Adriatic Sea, but in Montenegro, not in Croatia. It's so many churches, beautiful, it's a pearl. So that's the name of group Boka. He won many awards because of his business, what he did. And he helped a lot of Croatian communities, but not only Croatian communities in Australia. I remember when I met him first, you know what, it was amazing. He was driving me in his old car with manual change, because everybody in Australia had automatic. And he had like old Nokia cell phone. He's still today not using a smartphone. He's had big business, but he's not using smartphone. He wakes up at the age of 80s. He 4:30 works with the people there and just trying to help. There's another interesting story. He was recovered from COVID. He was 4 weeks in artificial coma because of COVID. And what's interesting, he got COVID at the dinner with the Australian Prime Minister. At that time, Australian Prime Minister, I think he was coming back from Washington. He had a meeting with Trump, and they went back home. And because he's politically also active, he was supporting the leading party at that time, and they had a dinner together, and he got COVID. He was 4 weeks in hospital, 25 days, and then he carried on in this age, but he recovered with strong desire to live, to go on and so on. And after that, as I said, there's a list of things that he's doing. And he was like following 20 years our work. We were meeting him when he came to Croatia. I didn't ask for money, he didn't say anything. And once, I remember very well, we were like having coffee with the director. How can I help the university? What do you need? When I was leading a leadership program, I remember when we were talking about fundraising, to be in touch, to be the contact personally, and so on. So I was like, okay, that we did. So in any case, then he helped us to foster scholarship fund Marko Franović, and this fund is more than $1 million Australian dollars. It's a huge amount of money for us, and so we can be helping full students and students who are in need. And now he donated also some other money for scholarship for students of medicine. So that's how he helped us, and he said that's very important for me. And also he donated for our university library about 70,000 euro at the beginning. But he said, I'm not finishing there. He watched what are we doing, and he said, okay, not too much at once. but we are also we are happy that he's doing a lot. So I wanted to present him. Maybe there are not great thoughts behind, but I see him really as somebody who's helping us to foster our mission in the spirit what Ante said before. And we learn a lot from Mr. Franović, and in a very hard time, also financially, he helped us a lot to overcome those difficulties. And he sees also how it is important education, because he said, I formally not educated. I escaped communist time, I have that money, and I'm really helping young people, young generation, to be aware how it is important to life, to have a responsible life, with faith, with hope, and to change society. He's always not in Croatia. Australia is difficult, when we have this scholarship festivities, or when we those people, and he's always online, connected. He's interested in what is going on the university, and he helps a lot also with the School of Medicine establishment. Many people ask me, how did we do that at a small university? Without some benefactors like Marko Franović, we couldn't do this. So I see it there, and so I'm finishing this connection between those Croatian in exile and in Australian states and Canada. Like I know that other universities, especially UKU, have good connection to the immigration, who wants to help back in their homeland, especially in the field of education. So I think we should foster more at our universities this philanthropic work, to rely on it, and to do best of it, also because those are good examples to our students and to our faculty members. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Father Rector, so much for your impressive story. And now is the time. We have a few minutes left for discussion, so if anybody, maybe all the speakers could come forward. Maybe yes. Ante, could you please Radoslav, Svitlana, Zeljko, Jim. You take it already. Take your chairs, please. So anybody would like to raise a question? Yeah.
I have two questions. First one concerning Slipyi. You mentioned 1963 as a year of releasing Slipyi and letting him move to Rome. Can you describe more about that situation, international pressure, or Vatican diplomacy, or
language. Yeah, and it was not very advisable on the side of Soviets to liberate him, because they were saying, well, he will start to talk, you know, and he promised that he will not talk. That's why his memoirs, they were published only in the year 2014. So, but they were written in the 60s, so immediately after his liberation. But nevertheless, he started to talk, but it was in the 70s. So he was more like advocating at that time. So, and he wrote in his memoirs about the liberation, and also there are memoirs of journalist cousins, who was like that person from between Kennedy, Pope John XXIII, and Khrushchev. So he left a little bit of information on what was going on. So Andrei Mikhailko, he wrote his PhD thesis on Josyf Slipyi.
Are there memories published in English?
They are translated, and we are waiting for publication. And we have already like 2 Ukrainian editions now.
Would you mind waiting a bit, Jan? And
of course.
After the second question, Radoslav, we would like to raise a question.
2 brief questions, please.
Okay.
One to Father Dean about Mr. Hanus, Professor Hanus. Was he in any way inspired by church teaching, by church documents, or as all mentioned in his publications or writings? And on the other hand, did he inspire the church here in any way? I mean, bishops. And another question is perhaps to Zeljko about the current contemporary relations of the university with church authorities in Croatia, you know, bishops. Is it friendly or modern friendly or less? Thank you.
So speaking about what's documentary impacted him and changed him a lot, I would say his studies done in Innsbruck was completely changing and shaping his mind's way of thinking, how the world can be perceived, how even culture can be understood, how even the values can be interpreted in different ways. So I think, you know, this impact from Innsbruck and that all his studies done there was completely new even to the scene of Slovakia. No one really studied, you know, these thinkers so deeply as he did. And Romano Guardini is behind almost all his thoughts. So when you are reading Hanus and reading Guardini, you can find lots of different comments and ideas. Even Hanus is more precise, more methodological, and very specific in a way how he's formulating his final ideas. He's not just talking about everything, but if he speaks about the life experience, he speaks about the experience of the specific man in what he is working on, doing something, etc., etc. So I think, you know, the Guardini it's well influenced. He was very influenced by him. If he changed the people in Slovakia, first of all, I have to say that Ante Hurkina, when he chose him to send him after 1 year of having him as a seminarian in Spiš, he found in that very young man, when he accepted him into the seminary, that he is ready to move on and to go to study further. So he spent only 1 year in a seminary in Spišská Kapitula. And he is even describing this year in the seminary that walking among the walls where was everything so dark and that no one was very friendly to me was not really an environment for me to learn. But then, Mary Linka, very famous photo of Linka and talking to Hanus, to young Hanus as a seminarian, immediately sending him to Innsbruck, and after years he impacted not just the Linkas and other followers or peoples, but also the bishops, of course, and the Catholic agenda or Catholic groups of thinkers in Slovakia as well, in many different ways. There is very famous
printer or edition of Verbum, which is even very popular today in Slovakia, and he was one of these founders and supporters of the Verbum as spreading the word and words, ideas among the Catholic thinkers. He even found a company of other Catholic thinkers in Slovakia, formulated small groups which was spreading the ideas among the people in the society. That's a lot being done on his life. Doesn't really, sorry, that doesn't really come to my mind. There was a couple of people who been involved in his circles who spread his words. It doesn't come to my mind, sorry for that. But he truly influenced many of them, yes, absolutely, not just the bishop itself. Even right now, Hanus is not just my classes, it's a mandatory reading for the seminarians. We want them to read seeing this complexity of man, this hunger for the spiritual values as something which even today's society really needs. And Hanus can bring all these thoughts in a very specific way and can give you more of that very deepful insight into it. So I find Hanus very inspiring in my thoughts. I've been reading about him for quite a while. Thank you.
It's a very tough question, not because I want to be politically correct. Let's say Croatia, okay, we are in a very specific situation, and Ante described that very well. First of all, now the Cardinal founded universities retires since this year, and we have no Archbishop who is Grand Chancellor. We are still trying to find a good deal of dialogue with him, but he's open to the university, that's clear. But in general, I could say that I cannot say that Croatian universities, public or private, are the best in the world. That's far from that. But what we do have in Croatia is that we have this tradition of teaching and research universities in once. So no one university, not even Catholic University, would succeed without working on this research excellence and teaching excellence, because there is a competition. So bishops have to be aware of that, because of that, and then they don't. I didn't have really. I can say that Cardinal Bozanić never mixed up in daily work or even whom to choose, professors. No, he was really what Ante said, saying, okay, let's say general outlines, but then you have this academic freedom. Okay, the question is responsibility of us to know what's going on in society, what is going on to church and banks. It's not easy. As a young universities, you make maybe some mistakes that you shouldn't do there, but also you have some possibilities. For example, by choosing faculty, you can keep it so that's you're still that you can say, okay, on one side, I say always how to find some faculties who are on one side good men, that's Catholics, good researcher and good teacher. It's sometimes quite impossible. Let's have at least 2 of 3. This correctly. Let's at least have 2 of 3 of that. And it's not always easy. And secondly, what I see as a challenge for us, as I think all of you as new universities, when we have we try always to be a little bit different. Not because being different, what we said of this how to say, viewpoint, not only viewpoint, but without our medicine, School of Medicine. It's on 3rd year, it's great opposition to that, but we are not different only because we have something in the program like medical, humanistic through all 6 years, with a little bit of theology, communication science, psychology, and so on, but also that we have adapted completely new study program, which is normal in state or other part of the world. But not in our state universities who are still Austro-Hungarian, this Central European-oriented way of teaching. And I say always, we are better, but that we try to transfer the knowledge in a different way to the students. That's the point. Not the point that you just repeat the same program. So that was for them, it's like they were like shocked because we introduced a completely new. There is a clear stance in that what a School of Medicine program has to be. But the way, how do you teach students? How do you transfer the knowledge? How do you work with them? And that's also in psychology, for example. We introduced a little bit more different approach to those issues. So, and then also what we try to not to please the bishop, in any case, to open to those issues that are important to the church. Let's say what we founded is, with great help of Revered, is a center for the safeguarding of the children. And now we became really, with all this question of pedophilia in the church, leading force in not only in the church society and in the educational field. For example, now Revered is all other those supporting foundations from the church. They said if you ask money or help, you have to make education on Catholic University. And we go also in the school, and we have those programs now in different dioceses. We are doing now for two years. Or in some other fields, let's say, that bishops says, okay, we see that you are doing for the society, for teaching, not in a ideological way, but you are helping also church in their mission. So, for example, we have some projects who are financed also by the Bishops' Conference. So they said, okay, we would like to know something, what's going on. We will give some money, and we, in return, we would like you to deal with, to give us some advice or to help us. Not many, but in any case, we see that's the way how to deal with them. That they feel that the university, Catholic University, in this academic research is also serving the church, not only in these ideological issues going there. But they see that that's the issue that we don't have, like other Catholic universities, only theology, but we have pedagogy, we have nursing, for example. That's because, for example, now a big issue in Croatia is palliative care. And everybody's talking about that because we are an aging society and we have like a master program in palliative care. And so the bishops are also telling you, when the churches ask, what do you do in this field? They said, okay, we do practically something. We have some hospices, but we have also study program in that at Catholic universities. And we try to be a leading force in that, in small groups, but in any case. So, we try to cooperate and to find a good way out. So we are very happy. We are, just to finish, not to bother you, we are also a little bit strange because we don't have theology study. We have a chair of theology because, what Ante said, in Croatia, the Catholic faculty of Catholic theology is in State University. And when the Cardinal decided to found Catholic University, he said, okay, they should stay there. Because they were founder of these state universities. We have the university chair of theology and philosophy, so they are giving lecture in theology and philosophy in all different fields, but we actually don't have theology, which is good, in that way that we don't have to deal with seminarians. I'm lucky because of that. I did that in the state university. I'm just kidding, but I'm telling a little bit true. Because that's always a hot spot with bishops. So, thank you. So.
Okay, thank you, Zeljko. The next one is Clemens and the lady over there.
A very short and deep question of Father Ante. I was fascinated by the connections between Christ's life and the university, incarnation, Passion of Christ, Pentecost. It reminded me a little bit of Simon Weil, the little text on the study of mathematics and the love of God. So, Father Ante, if you were to write a book on gospel values and passages informing a Catholic university, how would the book look
like? These same points I took from a speech of Cardinal, and if I would write a book about the Catholic University, Christ star. Reigns of Christ star. Also, the sign of our university, Catholic University, is a star with 8 points or 8 rays. So that it's. I think it's interesting to find many inspirations or parts of inspiration in this idea of this image of star, thinking always that Christ is this star. Also, I think that the title of the book would be The Rays of the Star, which is Christ.
Okay, so the lady over there and Samuel.
Thank you. So my question was inspired by this idea of philanthropy. So tomorrow I will speak about a leader from St. Mary's College, Sister Natalie Wolf, and she said at one point, when philanthropy comes into higher education in the United States, it goes first to famous universities, it goes second to large universities, it goes third to famous liberal arts colleges, it goes fourth to women's colleges, and it goes last to Catholic women's colleges. So I'm just curious as to whether in Central and Eastern Europe, is there actually a hierarchy of how philanthropy comes to higher education, or is philanthropy just young in general coming into higher education? Maybe others.
So maybe I think that in all other countries maybe we have different experiences. But in my experience, knowing a little bit situation in Central Eastern Europe, philanthropy is just at the beginning, because the communist period just cut it down, and we rely too much upon state. Secondly, there is some law limitation, because you don't have like tax deduction. It's very low in different countries, but it's not like if you help some charity foundation in universities that you get tax return and so that. This culture of philanthropy, it's because people is always like suspicious about that. Also, there is also, it's true, we have to be careful. I know that even in the States there are many ethical issues, because we have this new rich class who became rich under many suspicious circumstances in former communist countries, oligarchs, what we say, and church has to be really careful choosing one. I really talked about some guy who was also, he became successful in Australia, not in Croatia. You see, that's a completely different situation. I would be really careful to think about somebody who's giving money to universities if I would think what is the source of his money. I know that, for example, Mr. Marko Franović is an honest man. He paid during COVID time, he paid his people from his own money, because he's entrepreneurs, and he didn't hire anybody because activities were shut down. So that, let's say, a little bit social teaching of the church in place. But we have to foster this culture so that's the reason maybe I don't know really, even a bigger state university that somebody donated like $1 million in Croatia, even though we have really huge universities. Okay, some people is giving, and then there are some foundations more and more. And I now know in Croatia 2 or 3, even one professor from Yale now, to State School of Law, and also he donated to us. That's interesting, even though we don't have still School of Law, but his legacy is also being Catholic. He said, when I'm gone, there is something for you, because I see that the importance of Catholic education, and there is a. So, if you're talking, my opinion is that fundraising and philanthropy, in general, in Central Eastern Europe, is a task to perform, and I think it has future, but it's still from different parts, not even in the church. Maybe, if I am not mistaken, let's finish it. Uku is maybe a good example. as far I know. But this is hard work becoming. What are they doing with Ukrainian diaspora, let's say, in the States, in Canada, in Australia, and they live out of it because they don't have state support. Most of our Central Eastern Catholic University have some kind of support from state. Some are fully funded by state, some one part by Catholic University in Croatia. So that's make life on one side easier, but on the one side much more difficult. So I don't know if I answered you.
Okay, so the next question is Samuel.
Honestly, I don't have a question, but I've got really small to say, to add something to Professor Hanus, because our previous rector, Josyf, is not present here, and he would definitely tell you something, because our conference is about personalities and their stories, and let me tell you just a small story. Because Professor Hanus was devoted priest, devoted director of seminary and speech. He was also man of guests, and I would like to point out one guest. Professor Hanus was the last person in 1950s who leave seminary, because seminary was closing because communist era, and he was the last person. And he knelt in seminary when he knew that the police, communist is coming. He knelt on his knees in seminary chapel and started singing traditional Slovak song, "Don't leave us, Holy Mother, don't leave us." And then seminary was closed for about 40 years. And Professor Hanus spent several years in jail and out of priest service. And in the 1990s, when the seminary was opened again, he was the first person who came. He was about 80 years old man, and it was about January. There was a lot of snow, especially in this area where our seminary is. He knelt in the snow and he kissed the doorstone of the seminary. So Dr. Hanus was not only a person who was devoted spiritually, but also physically to the church and to the seminary. So that's, I think, one of those stories which can be memorable and inspiration for us.
Anybody else would like to comment, or there's a question? I think Jan, you got some question?
Yeah, I think the question is concerning to Ladislav Hanus. You mentioned that his consecration, priest consecration, was in 1922 in Ružomberku.
In Ružomberku, yes.
Why? And again, after retirement, he lived again in Ružomberku. How is he connected with Ružomberku?
I don't really know.
Ružomberku is just central.
Yeah, it's the central one. Not so known about his ordinations, about how he was ordained.
Okay.
That should be looking into it, maybe perfect.
Maybe it's just coincidence.
Yeah, possible.
Accommodation is cheap here.
Oh, yeah.
That's it. And maybe Mrs. Wassler would like to say
yes, Mrs. Wassler.
Final words.
But first, take it to our panel, right?
Thank you very much to you all, and now we have a half of hour, because at 7 p.m. we'll start a short performance, what we prepared for you in the foyer of Faculty of Education. My question for you, do you need more time for relaxation? Because I can imagine that you... Okay, comments I think that you don't. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. Well, it's up to you. dinner, and we can continue with the discussion. Yeah.
Thank you very much.